This video is a love letter to all the people who tell us to go vote. Voting for president in America does not matter. Your vote for president, if you live in 36 to 44 states, doesn't really matter. Voting in state and local elections, yeah, those still matter. Presidential, Now, before I get into any of this, I just want to clarify what I'm saying, and really clarify what I'm not saying with this video. I'm not saying you shouldn't vote for president, or that your vote is not counted at all. I'm also not saying that both of the candidates are the same, or that both of the parties are the same. Not saying any of that, okay? The point I'm trying to make with this video is that the electoral system of voting for president in America is broken, outdated, and fundamentally undemocratic. And that putting energy into it at all, really, is at best going to keep things the same, and at worst going to continue to kick the can being our degrading world, down the road for future generations to deal with. And look, I know many people who say go vote every 4 years. I respect a lot of those people who do so, and I know why they say so. Because voting in America is a privilege, a right, and for a good amount of people, pretty easy to do. I have two problems with this, though. One, does your vote really matter all that much? And two, will who you're voting for actually change a whole lot? Now, I'm going to be getting into both of these, but I just want to start off by looking at how much your vote actually matters in the American presidential election. And to do so, let's look at some stats, shall we? We love stats, folks. We love stats, don't we, folks? Just look at this. 36 states between the 2000 and 2020 presidential elections voted the same way every single time. That means if you voted in a state like Texas or Tennessee or my unsaved Kentucky during that time, no matter who you voted for, Democrat, Republican, Jeb, your votes went to the Republican entirely. And similarly, if you lived in California or Washington or New York during this time, no matter who you voted for, your state electors supported the Democratic candidate entirely. And I know this might sound obvious to some, but to me, it's not laid out like this enough, or I feel like it's not laid out like this enough, because your vote for president is not counted because it's not your vote that matters in the election. Seriously. Again, might sound super elementary, but we, the people, don't vote for president. We vote for who we want to see as president, and then the electors see how the majority of the state voted and vote entirely that way. There are many reasons that people will give you as to why it's designed this way. Some people are going to say, oh, it's to protect small states' rights. And others might say it's there to blunt any popular radical change that might come from the people themselves. And with a lot of these arguments, I'm going to say there's truth to them. However, this is not how things have played out in the modern day. Simply put, the Electoral College favors a small batch of states, and not the smaller states, no. It's a small cohort of states that, if I may bluntly say, can't make up their fucking minds. Both parties treat these states like they're a dog they're trying to win over in a divorce. They put them in the middle of the room every 4 years, and they both go to opposite ends and just start yelling things at them that they'll hope will get them to their side. Because of this electoral design, those 5 to 8 states end up being the only ones that really matter in regards to the presidential election. Every other state is predetermined, preordained, inconsequential, electorally speaking. This means that functionally, 80% of America's population has a lesser vote than the rest when it comes to the presidential election. And look, if you don't believe me, that's fine. Please look into it yourself. Because if you're like me and you're interested in this, the more you look into it, the more you'll find that the Electoral College in presidential elections in general in America were not only broken from the very start, just look at the reason the 12th Amendment exists, but contentious among the framers themselves. While the Electoral College did serve as a compromise between the larger and smaller states, it also served as a compromise between the northern and southern states over one thing. Can you guess what that is? It's slavery. It's slavery. In a Kill Read a Mars Time article on the Electoral College, he writes, at the Philadelphia Convention, the visionary Pennsylvanian, James Wilson, proposed direct national election of the president. But the savvy Virginian, James Madison, responded that such a system would prove unacceptable to the South. The right of suffrage was much more diffusive, i.e. extensive, in the northern than the southern states, and the latter could have no influence in the election on the score of, you can read that word yourself. In other words, in a direct election system, the North would outnumber the South, whose many slaves, more than 500,000 in all, of course could not vote. But the Electoral College, a prototype of which Madison proposed in the same speech, instead let each southern state count its slaves, albeit with a 2/5 discount. This often gave southern states more representation than northern ones, but really, I mention this just to make the point that the Electoral College came baked in with racist and inhumane policy that has long since been repealed. We are participating in a system that was designed by men from a very different time. A time which we can very clearly look back at and see horrors that we would not even imagine bringing back into today. This is just one of the reasons of why it infuriates me so much when I hear somebody get ridiculed for voicing that they aren't interested in voting, or just voicing a general disillusionment with the two-party system. And I'm sure that at some point in the past 8 years, whether it be online or in person, you've heard somebody say, I don't really want to vote for Hillary, or I'm not voting for Biden. And somebody responds with a prompt, you might as well be voting for Trump then. It literally happened to Chappell Roan while I was writing this script. So you probably have seen it at this point. Here's the truth of the matter. If you live in one of those 36 states that I mentioned earlier, I can guess with a 99% accuracy how you're voting. Not how you're actually voting, but how your vote is going to be counted by the electors. So if you're in Kentucky, for example, and you're voting for Harris this election, your vote is going to go to Trump. I get that your vote will be counted in the popular vote margins and the actual breakdown percentage of who voted for who. But remember, that doesn't matter. The actual effect of your vote for Harris is null and void. Quite literally reduced to zero, and your vote goes to Trump.
What's going on?
That's how the scenario is going to play out on November 5th. Those 44 state election results will roll in, preordained by the electoral gods, and the country will then wait with bated breath to see how those 6 coin tosses landed. Now I know there are already people out there saying, what about the third party votes? You know, what about Cornel West or Jill Stein, shouts out Jill, or Claudia with PSL, or the brainworm dog eater. Here's the thing about third parties in America. They don't work. The system is designed in a way in which it nullifies any third-party vote in a presidential election. Here's a quick portion of a video from Primer called Simulating Alternate Voting Systems that shows and explains exactly how and why third parties don't work in our electoral system.
This system works just fine when there are only 2 candidates or parties. And sure, there will be some disagreement, but it's hard to think of anything that could be more fair than just seeing who most voters prefer. But now let's add a third purple candidate. What do you think will happen in this case? Well, let's see. With purple in the mix, green ends up winning instead of orange. This result is a bit weird. Purple joined the race just to get last place, but they still changed the winner. Orange voters are going to be mad about that, and even most purple voters would have preferred orange over green. This is called the spoiler effect. So these purple voters are presented with a difficult choice. Do they vote for their honest favorite, leaving the choice to others? Or do they strategically vote for their second choice, hoping to get an outcome they prefer? The argument for voting honestly is that you need to do this if your favorite party is going to have a chance at building more support over time to eventually win. But that'll mean throwing a lot of elections to your least favorite party over time. It's really hard to ignore the tangible, immediate stakes in any given election, so it turns out that most people don't even consider third parties. And the 2 major parties mostly just need to worry about each other in a zero-sum game.
Now, this was not some grandmaster plan by the founders to only allow 2 parties. The founders themselves, you probably heard from somebody at this point, didn't want parties to form. Now, they did create a system extremely similar to the one in Britain, in which parties had formed 100 years earlier, and then had just kind of crossed their fingers and hoped that they wouldn't emerge. And then they did, but again, the plurality method of voting, the one we have in American presidential elections, does work for 2 parties, completely fine, but quite literally breaks down when a third party is introduced, splitting one of the party's votes into 2 and possibly giving the least popular candidate the most votes. Now, originally, at this point in the video, I started talking about how we might fix our electoral system and might be able to bring about realistic reform that actually works within the boundaries of the Electoral College, but helps to better reflect the popular will of the people. But the more I thought about it, and after filming and editing it, I realized that for me, this would not be enough. In my opinion, we need to absolutely abolish the Electoral College and open up the presidential election to direct voting, the way every other election in America goes. And it would subsequently make more than just two parties viable. Unfortunately, however, I think that at this point, it might be too little too late. As far as I see it, we need radical change to how our government, our economy, our businesses, our world operates. Because to me, it seems to be exponentially changing and seemingly for the worse. To put it bluntly, the two parties that we have right now are not ready or able to meet the needs of the moment. We are, as far as I'm concerned, like Wile E. Coyote. We have run off the cliff, but have yet to look down. The world will make us look down though. Whether it's through climate crises, economic crises, mass impoverishment, it will force us to look down. And once we look down, we will begin to fall fast. That's why neither of these parties are enough to me. Both parties are not taking the appropriate measures to deal with climate change. Both parties are co-signing off on inhumane immigration policy that, frankly, would be unbelievable of the Democratic Party in 2016. Both parties have no intention of getting rid of the death penalty or providing affordable health care or affordable education to any citizen of this country. And both parties are helping to carry out a genocide. All of these issues are off the table. You have no say in them, presidentially speaking. And I know that the Democratic Party does differ on many very important things, such as gay rights and trans rights and abortion rights. But the thing is, with issues like that, I'm not so sure how much they actually care about them. Because it seems to me, if they're able to backslide on things like immigration or even climate change mitigation, then why would any issue be any different? That's what particularly scares me about the current moment. It seems to me that as much as the Democratic Party and their apparatuses continue to vilify the right, they are at the same time slowly moving closer and closer to the right. For God's sakes, war criminal Dick Cheney endorsed the Harris campaign, and they were jubilant about it. I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but that's not a good thing. So it seems to me that neither party is ready or able to actually meet the needs of the moment, which is essential if all of us are going to survive into the future. Because if we keep going down this road of always picking the lesser of two evils, people are going to die, and things will get worse. Conditions will continue to degrade at home and abroad until people cannot take it anymore. And that's when shit will hit the fan. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I can assure you that it's going to happen. And we're already seeing the results of our ruling class's inability to meet the needs of the people. While writing this video, we saw possibly the deadliest hurricane in our nation's history catastrophically hit a place 450 miles north of where it made landfall. That very same day, a chemical plant in Georgia caught fire, sending and increasing the amount of toxic chlorine particles in the air by over 1,000 times. Smoke is now just a regular weather pattern, and we are continuously and unanimously sending billions of dollars of weapons to Israel so that they can commit a genocide and continue to bring the world closer to the brink of war. And that's just what's been going on in the past week. So, what should you do? What can you do? I'm actually going to tell you to go vote. But this time, instead of just caring about the presidential elections, care more about the state and local election candidates, because those are the ones that are actually going to bring about meaningful change in the community around you, and they do and count far more than your presidential election, 100%. But before doing any of that, your number one priority, if you live in this country and want to see it meaningfully change for the better, should be to organize with other people. Organize with the people you work with. Organize with the people in your apartment building. Organize with the people. Period. Because we need to listen and find out what changes need to be made to affect not only your lives, but also the lives of people within your community. These two parties, how I see it, are not going to last much longer. Because with these depreciating conditions, most people's lives, in one way or another, are going to continue to get worse. and they are going to continue to lose faith in these institutions. The only way we're going to have a meaningful change happen in this country is when people go out and not just vote, but meet up with other people to listen and organize around the real issues that are plaguing a large swath of America. That's the only way that that's going to happen. You simply voting is not going to bring about that change. Right now, we have two parties that are going to continue to let us backslide, or to continue to let things get worse for more and more people, while constantly catering to the middle class and to people who are moderate. And some people are probably going to call me radical for saying this. I will gladly take the title radical over moderate, because in my opinion, we absolutely need radical change. Because whether we like it or not, we are facing down the barrel of an ever-increasing radical world. Radical climate change effects, radical spontaneous impoverishment, radical amounts of death. That's what we are barreling towards, and neither party is addressing the needs properly. Only with moderate changes that can barely get past our failing two-party system. I know I can't do it alone. I know I'm not doing much probably by making this video. I'm not trying to say go out on the street and begin the revolution now. But I'm saying to anybody watching this, go find an organization near you that's actually fighting for these things, fighting for affordable housing, affordable education, livable wages, anything that is worth fighting for. And I'm asking people to join these movements to help build up their numbers and power. Because if we can get enough people to be part of these movements and organizations that are all aligned around a concrete set of goals, then when shit hits the fan, because shit will hit the fan, we will be ready and able to strike while the iron is hot and maybe change the direction of this country and our world for the better.
Commander unidentified.
And I know this might not sound great, and it might even sound cynical to some. But the thing is, with much of what I've seen throughout my life and even just the past year alone, I'm pretty certain that this is more true than it is false. So please, don't put all your energy into voting for president. You can still vote for president, but know that you're really not doing a whole lot. Because to me, it seems that even if we vote for Harris, all we will be doing is staving off more of us drowning for now. And again, it seems that the Democrats are willing to throw people overboard when it becomes necessary. The water is quickly rising, and neither of these parties is building a fucking boat. So find some people who will. Because right now, if you'll let me merge my two metaphors, when shit hits the fan, we're all going underwater. And it's gonna be some shitty water. Welcome to America.